Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
And hello there. Welcome to June 1, Friday. And a dreary one at that. And made more dreary by the fact that on this 600 block of Smithfield, on which I currently sit, there's an entire half of the block that appears to be dead, dying. An institution downtown, the Smithfield Cafe, which sits directly across from us, is closed. Today it closes, I guess, when we leave here at 11. There's going to be on the street a bit of a going away party for the sweet man who has owned it, whose father founded the Smithfield Cafe, John Petroleus. And I don't know. Also closed this week on this block on Smithfield is an Office Depot, and both are on the same side of the street. And it's just like a dying ghost town on that side. On our side of the street, things look very alive. And I heard somebody who deals in downtown development suggest that one of the problems of finding anyone to relocate to the other side of the street on Smithfield is that that's where the bus lane is. And consequently, that's where people congregate on the sidewalk at the bus stops waiting for their buses. And that creates, I guess, a problem with maybe, getting indoors. Not really, though. I don't think any of the people waiting for buses block doors, but I guess people don't want these hordes of the wrong kind of people standing in front of their establishment, so nobody wants to be on that side of the street. Well, what the heck are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And since when did people who ride the bus become undesirable? And since when was it a negative to have a bus stop in front of your establishment? If we were thinking straight, having a bus stop in front of your establishment would be a positive. I don't know. But the Smithfield Cafe, which was, just a classic all-around restaurant, has been, as the sign says right outside, has been serving Pittsburgh since, 1933, I think. And there's a sad story about the closing in today's Post-Gazette. And apparently, Mr. Petroleus did everything he could to keep that place open. Everything he could. He even lost his home because he didn't want to have all the faithful people who had worked for him for so many years, he didn't want to put them out of work. And so he said, I'll lose my home before I close this. And he did lose his home. But he never could rent out the top. He owns the building. He could never rent out the top stories above the restaurant. And that's what took him down. Sad. And all those hard-working women in there, and the guys, the bus boys, the cooks, there's just more unemployed, hard-working Americans. More out of work. The George Aikens closed on Forbes as well. I don't know. Meanwhile, you hear all this positive news about PNC buying the Lord and Taylor building, and they're going to, put in a big operation there, and PNC building this huge skyscraper, and PNC, and you see clearly that the downtown is being taken over by these, by the banks. The banks are part and parcel of much of the big development going on now. So it's the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots are represented by this hardworking George Petroleus, who will now leave Pittsburgh, his home forever, and go down and live with his daughter in the South. Something so sad about it all. Ah, well. So the big story is what? John Edwards cleared. My understanding of this, and I know my sister made a impassioned rant about it one day on the show, that the jurors reached the proper verdict here. This was an absurd case, and brought in all likelihood for political reasons, but an extremely difficult case to prove, and that is proved by the verdict. Mistrial in most of the counts, and an acquittal on the only one that the jury agreed on. So just because you think the guy, and I think it's pretty much unanimous, you think the guy is a jerk of the highest order, that ain't a felony. It's just not. So, and I don't know if you heard his speech when he was acquitted, but it was so odd, I thought. And his poor daughter, who's been with him every day, very beautiful, but boy, has she put on weight. And it's you can see, often that is because of unbelievable stress. You eat to comfort yourself. And I swear, she's put on 60 pounds. It looks like. I can't imagine what she's dealt with. And standing by the side of her father, and loving and missing her mother, and being there for her other, siblings. And I think she was just married, so she's been away from her husband. This can't be, I don't know. I feel for her. This man continues to ruin lives, I would suggest. And he, I thought, bizarrely made a point yesterday in his remarks about how much he loves his daughter Quinn. Now, Quinn is the love child. Quinn is the daughter of Riel Hunter and him. So after he praised his poor daughter Kate, who's standing behind him, and then mentioned his 2 young children at home, he then makes this big to-do about Quinn, who I love more than any of you can imagine. And I thought, I don't want to hear any of this. I really don't. All it did was remind us of why, I mean, the whole sordid nature of the whole thing. In fact, you're screwing around on your dying wife, and then you denied, do I recall this correctly? You denied being Quinn's father. Quite vociferously. Shamelessly. Oh, dear. Well, that was pretty revolting. I don't know. Is there any good news? Pirates are back at 500. At least until this evening. Mm-hmm. But I think they could do very well. They got away games in Milwaukee. And the Brewers ain't looking too hot this year, so that's maybe pretty good. Arts Festival starts today, and of course, that's why it's raining. Although John Schmitz, writing in the PG today, tells us that he actually went back and crunched the numbers because, you know, it's a well-known fact that all you need to do to get rain in Pittsburgh is start up the Arts Festival. And so Schmitz went back and looked at the weather and crunched the numbers during the Arts Festival. And astonishingly, what he found was that it actually rained less frequently during the Arts Festival than all other days in June. Or, for that matter, all year. It just doesn't seem like... No, but he did. Those are the facts. So that's what it says. And he says it quite clearly. He did it. He did it with a computer. He just did the last 10 years. In the last decade, it actually rained less frequently during the Arts Festival than at other times in June, or for that matter, all year. And then he says, that said, you know what comes next. The Art Festival starts today, and it's going to rain. I don't know. Go figure. Well, I'm looking at a picture of a precious, precious, wondrous Pittsburgher standing in what looks like a dump with an umbrella over his head. This is how I'm going to make that segue. And this is on a press release from the Anthology Film Archives in New York City. And the guy whose picture I'm looking at, let me see, is a young Tony Buba. Do you know Tony Buba? You know the name? See, this is one of those instances where someone who is one of ours is not as celebrated and or recognized here as he is in New York and in other circles, because let me read you this. One of the most singular and egregiously overlooked filmmakers in the United States, Tony Buba, is a national treasure, the prime representative of the blue-collar, populist, politically committed, yet outrageously entertaining American filmmaking movement. Tony Buba has lived in Braddock all his life. Raised there. His heart's in Braddock. Well, he's moved up to Braddock Hills. But the Anthology Film Archive tells the New York audience this. Braddock, a town that, like many others across the country, fell victim to the decimation of American industry, and thus experiencing a precipitous and tragic decline into poverty and abandonment. And what Tony Buba has done is he has been making films documenting Braddock and what has happened and is happening to it. He's done features, shorts, narratives, fictional narratives. He's been doing it for 40 years. And the Anthology Film Archive is doing an entire retrospective of Tony Buba's work. They call him the Bard of Braddock, from June 8th to June 12th. And this is just a huge honor. My understanding is that the New York Times is going to be doing a piece on Sunday about him. Tony is now, as we speak, working on finishing up his latest documentary, which, of course, to none of our surprise, is about the closing of Braddock Hospital by UPMC. Tony was one of the major activists trying to keep the hospital in Braddock. He was also behind many of the, very much part and parcel of, the protests and rallies about it. The Anthology Film Archive says this, displaying a passionate commitment to chronicling Braddock's trajectory and an inspiring resourcefulness in making the films a reality. His body of work is an unparalleled record of the plight of urban America in general. Heavy as that may sound, Buba's profoundly good-natured sensibility, his boundless creativity, and his goofy sense of humor set his films far, far apart from most bleeding heart liberal filmmaking. And it's true. He is a treasure. He is a delight. And if you've never seen... See, this should be here. We should be seeing this. But as it is, it'll at least finally get seen. So they're doing a retrospective. They say it is a body of work that really has no parallel in the United States. And that will be at the Anthology Film Archives on 2nd Avenue and 2nd Street. June 8th through the 12th. It's an excuse to go to New York, guys. Jess is going this weekend. You're getting there a week too early. But he'll be doing one of his... actually, I have a little part in one of these films, Lightning Over Braddock, I show up in. He reminded me the other day. And that chronicles the decline of Braddock. And here's what the Village Voice said about Thunder over Braddock. Lightning over Braddock. Excuse me. A triumph of pragmatic populism with a cast of union organizers, street hustlers, and Buba himself. It should be required viewing at every Sundance seminar. This Rust Bowl fantasy is one of the few regional movies to successfully and unsentimentally peel off the national smile button. It is hysterically funny and sad. You laugh, you cry, but all you got to do is see Lightning over Braddock to see how great Buba's work is. He'll also be doing they'll be showing the Braddock Chronicles, which are a number of shorts that Tony produced during the 70s and 80s. And these are portraits of people and places in Braddock. And you meet an entrepreneur in Braddock who has failed at 12 businesses and is busy teaching would-be entrepreneurs self-confidence. The characters are so wondrous. These are our people, and we don't know them. A prophet in his own land, right? Scorned in his own land. And this marvelous street hustler, Sal, who he uses in Lightning Over Braddock and also in the Braddock Chronicles. And again, they say Sal's cocky patter breaks down at the end of the film when he visits his father's grave. Another short they say looks like raw material for a Bruce Springsteen song. Yeah, absolutely. Then there's a George Romero thing that'll be shown, but that's because Buba acts in it. As a matter of fact, he's killed in it. Struggles in Steel, which I believe did air on WQED. This is a story of African-American steel workers that Tony made. This is a marvelous documentary that he worked on with Ray Henderson, who was a black mill worker. And I guess what got him... that's what I'm remembering. I think... Was it QED or TAE? One of the stations it was TAE. Did this big documentary about steel workers in Pittsburgh as the industry began shutting down. So this would be in the 80s. And Ray Henderson, black, Pittsburgh, steel worker, watched that thing. And he was blown away by the fact that he did not see one African-American face in the entire documentary. And that's what got a story of African-American steel workers up and running, because the African-American steel workers were a critical part of that labor force. And so he went to Tony, and Tony and Henderson collaborated on this history. And it's a powerful piece. So, one of our own, Tony Buba, the Bard of Braddock, being truly honored by the Anthology Film Archives in New York. June 8th through 12th, they'll be showing his oeuvre, his body of work. And as I said, it's not only compelling stuff and a historical chronicle, which makes it so important, but Tony is one of the sweetest, funniest human beings in the universe, and that comes through there's such humanity in all these pieces and humor so that's Tony Buba. Okay? I think I'll take a break. Be right back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pittsburgh City Paper with the Three Rivers Arts Festival pullout is available now. Pick up one today for The Cult, Layla Hathaway, Global Navigators, and Joe Walsh. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vella wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vella usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvella@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
All right, speaking of Tony Buba and his current work that is not finished yet about UPMC trying to put a final nail in the coffin of the poor suffering folks of Braddock, Pennsylvania, by taking their hospital and imploding it. UPMC was showing off the hospital it built just down the road, really, from Braddock. How far is Braddock from Monroeville? Not far. Hop, skip, and a jump. Hop, skip, and a jump. So, UPMC and the hospital, I believe, in Braddock was more than a hospital. It was like the only functional institution that was left there. It was the only way. It's not like people there can jump in their, SUV if they're ill and get, and they. It was the only place where you could get a meal out, I believe, in the hospital cafeteria. So it was almost like a community center for people. It was more than a hospital. Anyway, UPMC put that down and built this monstrous hospital, a hop, skip, and a jump away, in Monroeville, a hop and a skip away from an existing hospital, Forbes. UPMC, absolutely despicable, showing off their $250 million new fancy schmancy hospital in Monroeville. When you get off, you're on the Parkway East, and you get off right before you can get on the turnpike at Monroeville. You instead drop down into Monroeville. It confronts you now, this edifice. I mean, it's like, that which was never there before, that which is unnecessary, that which is redundancy, that which is almost a sterling example of everything that's wrong. Well, not quite everything. Much of what's wrong with American healthcare. So I couldn't help but notice that there were two pieces in the paper. One was that UPMC is showing off his $250 million redundant, unnecessary piece of crap hospital in Monroeville. And the other, I don't think I have it here, is that State Senator Jim Furlow has sent a letter to the non-clinical staffers at UPMC who are attempting to unionize. And he has sent them a letter, bucking them up and telling them he's with them and yada, yada, yada. And apparently, the wages that these people are paid is just simply outrageous. Yet UPMC, as you know, has money to burn building hospitals in places that don't need them. But they won't pay a living wage to the people who work for them. I hope they unionize up a storm there. I had dinner last night with a number of extremely interesting people, and we were talking, and it occurred to me, we were talking about this slavery and the slave ships specifically, because one of the people there was a marvelous poet in her own right, had read Marcus Rediker's book about the slave trade. And Marcus Rediker is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh and a all-around good human being, too. But you know what? It occurred to me that the South built itself up on, obviously, the backs of exploited human beings, slaves. So all the wealth that was created there was stolen, essentially, from the labor of human beings. The South's heritage, its wealth, its plantations, its beauty, everything that was built there was built from riches acquired because there were no labor costs. Oh, I guess they had to sort of kind of feed them. But they sure as hell didn't have to pay them. And then it occurred to me that in this day and age, the South still exists largely on exploited labor. This is the part of the country where it's damn hard to unionize. This is the part of the country that saw industry flock to it because, again, the South always seems to manage a supply of cheap, exploited human labor. Now, they can't quite do slaves anymore, but they do the next best thing. I give you Walmart, coming out of Arkansas. You get these people to create your wealth, to do the labor, and you pay them as little as you can. And you give them as little as you can. And the culture down there is so inbred that the workers don't even notice it half the time, I get the impression. But this has become the template for what the Republican Party sells as how a good capitalist economy should run. Exploited labor. Unrepresented labor. What's going on in Wisconsin now, and the attempt in Ohio and in other states to break the backs of the public sector unions and as many private unions that aren't already dead. Why? So these workers whose labor you exploit to make your money have no power to resist. Doesn't seem all that much different. I mean, I know, granted, slavery was much more horrific, but it's now a kind of indentured servitude that so many American workers find themselves in. And they don't have the representation because they don't have unions. They don't have the wherewithal because they're not organized. They don't have the energy because they're stressed, overworked, and scared out of their minds that they'll lose the precious job they have. Increasingly, it seems to me that this is the kind of template that Republicans tout. Yesterday, wasn't it, that I read a little item, just a little sentence saying something about how, and so-and-so hopes to reduce labor costs. I forget what I was talking about. What was it?
Robot chicken.
Oh, the robot chicken deboner. Yeah, that was in the that was in the Wall Street Journal. These guys, scientists, been working for 8-9 years trying to figure out how to make a robotic chicken deboner, because if you can do that, man, you can cut those labor costs even more, which means you can throw human beings out of work. What a different kind of reality from the poor man who right now is just a few hundred feet across from me. Is poor, sweet Greek restaurateur. Ma and Pa, small business, who said, I'll lose my house before I lose this restaurant because I don't want to throw these wonderful people out of work. He lost his house. He's lost his restaurant. They're out of work. He didn't follow the conservative economic platform. He had a heart. He saw his workers as human beings who worked with him, not under him. And, well, that's why our economy sent him packing, and they all went packing, and now we don't create jobs. And the jobs we do create so often are crap. They pay crap. They have no benefits. And they do not allow people to live the mythological American dream. So, I just, you start connecting all the dots, and yeah, I do not say that the South lost the Civil War. They lost that battle, but their idea of keeping labor costs down won. It's ascendant of not allowing workers to have any power. Certainly not to let them organize. That's all survived. Slavery's gone. But a kind of soulless servitude that we call work for so many Americans, that has triumphed. Let me catch my breath. Be back in a moment.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the City Theater, Symphony, History Museum, and the Carnegie Museum. Check out this week's big deal featuring 50% off tickets to the Carnegie Science Center. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's only online deal site where the deals don't expire. bergbargains.com.
Hey, Billy, want to go to the state fair?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it. But now your parents are becoming energy efficient. They could save hundreds of dollars a year and take you to the fair next year.
I want to go now.
Oh, I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Yeah, I was just looking at the article about Furlow's letter, and there, the SEIU, the Service Employees International, is attempting to unionize what are called the non-clinical employees at UPMC, patient care technicians, non-nursing support staff. And Furlow's on record as saying, I will do everything in my limited power to be helpful. So we'll see. He sent. There's thousands of employees that could be unionized. Stop and think of how often in the last few weeks we've talked about unionizing efforts here. Because we have. You see it increasingly. And it's a direct result of this exploitation of people and their labor that has pushed us down so far. It's certainly pushed some people up very high, But we get then into Occupy Wall Street territory. We get into the rich getting richer and richer and the poor getting poorer and poorer and losing more and more opportunity. So, is it just me, or have you been noticing like some really bizarre murder stories in the news? I mean, we talked about the face-eating thing, which we haven't heard much about how that guy's doing who had his face eaten off. I don't imagine he's doing very well. I did read an eyewitness account, the guy who went looking for the cop. And it was it's almost you can't even imagine. Anyway, there are two. Have you heard what's going on in Canada with this guy? There's a porn star, I don't know if to call him a star, an actor, who's now on the lam. They think he's potentially on his way to France. And he's been sending body parts to, I mean, like, I think the Conservative party headquarters in Canadian capital in Ottawa, I believe they had a package that arrived the other day, opened it up, and there was a human foot in it. I think a hand was sent off to the Liberals. The Liberals got the hand. Meanwhile, where do they coming from? Well, he posted, this porn guy, an online video of him murdering a man and then dismembering the man and then performing sexual acts with the parts of the man. You can't even... Anyway, he's now on Interpol's most wanted list. They're looking for this guy. A man's torso was found in a suitcase. Unbelievable. Then I saw this in USA Today. A Morgan State University student accused of killing a housemate told police he ate the man's heart and part of his brain. Well, what's going on? Boy, people are insane. It's not just insane. It's the. Anyway, I'm sorry. I keep seeming. Every time I'm reading my papers, these stories are jumping out at me. Maybe these things used to happen, but they weren't covered. Is that possible? I doubt it. Or weren't covered in the mainstream media. Speaking of mainstream media, I happened to catch the NBC Nightly News the other day. Man, have these networks softened up the news. It is like one step away from Entertainment Tonight. It is. They cover stories now that would never, ever have been covered 10 years ago. Remember when the network news was a serious affair? It's not a serious affair. Oh, they might have, sure, they'll cover a serious thing here and there. But, like when Donna Summer died, I think that was the second story. And then after her, there was, I think they went into, what's his name, Gibb. And it was just like all this, it was entertainment news. It was popular culture news. And it was features. You wonder why Americans are increasingly clueless about what's going on in the world. Remember, we took that test the other day that ascertained that the people who knew the most about what was going on, both domestically and internationally, were people who got their news from NPR. And the people who knew the least got their news from Fox, and in between were the others. But then we find out that even the NPR guys didn't even get half of the questions right. And then we found out the questions. And I'm saying we. I knew the answers to all of them except one, which I wasn't sure of. They weren't tough. I mean, some of them were like, what political party controls the House of Representatives? Most people didn't know. Oh, man. I think we might need to rethink democracy. What do you think? Because I think democracy only can work if you have an informed citizenry. Somebody said that. And without an informed citizenry, what you have is a bunch of sheep that are manipulatable. And that's what you see going on now. And then you have a Supreme Court that says, hey, you guys with all the money, you can spend as much of that as you want to pour whatever crap you want into the heads of these sheep here and then send them off to the polls. That's sort of what we got now. That election in Wisconsin, 4 days away. The corporatists, the capitalists, the conservatives, the exploit labor crowd, the kill the union crowd, they are spending money. They are spending $25 to every $1 spent by the Democrats. They have bottomless reserves. A nice memory from Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. When I was young, my mother and I would ride the bus into town to see a dentist in the Jenkins Arcade building. Oh, God, I loved that place. After each visit to the dentist, the first stop would be to the Candy-Rama on the first floor. I remember that. The second stop would always be to the Smithfield Cafe. My mother and I had many hamburgers and milkshakes and good laughs there. Yeah. It wasn't long after I came to town that they tore the Jenkins Arcade down, because I remember covering that story. And I was horrified, because I'd never seen a building like it. I'd never seen an emporium like it. I thought it was so wondrous. And now what's there? Fifth Avenue place, right? The Jenkins Arcade. It's one of the places I think I did the first week I was a reporter here, I went there and did a story. It's where I interviewed people I was trying to do a story on the accent and the different words that I was encountering. And I sort of turned it around by going up to people in the Jenkins Arcade and asking where the bubbler was, because nobody knew what I was asking about. But I just wanted to show that, it can go both ways. I didn't understand half of what was being said. And where I came from, we called water fountains bubblers. It's sad. I know things move on, but what you see and the memories we have is of a world in which small business reigned. And it was a kinder, gentler time in that regard, and more memorable, because people, all these places were a little bit different. They weren't chains. And when you went to the Smithfield Cafe, that was in that same family for the entire 70-some years of that business's existence. And people know you. When I first got this job, I used to come down early and eat breakfast over there. Well, you get to the point where it's, hi, honey, you having the regular? Having the usual? Yeah, sure, I am. Though, special. Nice. gone. So here's something that's, wow, I came across that is really daunting. One of the reasons I've always said I'm against capital punishment is, God, you got to bet we get it wrong sometimes, and you convict an innocent person, and then if you kill that person and they're innocent, I mean, that's just clearly out and out murder that you can't, and a misjudgment that cannot be corrected. It's bad enough when you imprison somebody for life for something they never did, and then after 30 years you realize it and let them out. You've stolen 30 years of their life. That cannot be recovered. But if you take their life. Anyway, there's now a national database where they're tracking how many people are convicted and then later exonerated. So how many times does our system get it wrong, send innocent people to jail or to the death house? Well, thousands, as it turns out. Thousands. Many because of tainted evidence, many because of law enforcement not, just screwing up, many because of mistaken eyewitness identifications. And generally, we don't hear about these things. But so now there is a national registry of exonerations. And the odds are that that registry is only going to have on record a fraction of the wrongful imprisonment cases in the country. Because in order for them to be found, you've got to have these, these people willing to dig around and do the work. Yeah, who's there?
Hey, Lynn, it's PJ from Greensburg. I'm sorry about calling twice in 1 week, but this is really something that struck me this week. Okay. I was in a Barnes and Noble just earlier in the week, and I guess the long story short, what I'm getting at is it's not only it's. I saw the Barnes and Noble; it looked like a ghost town, and it no longer looked like a bookstore; it looked like a toy store. And I guess what I'm getting at is the internet is doing to even those kind of stores what Walmart did to the mom and pops, or Barnes and Noble did to the mom and pop bookstores.
Right. I mean, Barnes and Noble and Borders come in and destroy all the little mom and pop bookstores, and then they get destroyed by the internet and technology and ebooks. Right.
Well, and here's my point. The overall point I'm trying to make is that this is up to us. I came home, my wife went back to the same store later in the day, and she said the music section was closed, and there was hardly any music on the shelves. And I said to her, there are a lot of people that are good people and think they're doing a really great thing by shopping on the internet because they're getting such a great deal. And I said to my wife, but where are all those people that work at Barnes & Noble going to go?
No, well, you're absolutely right. We're going to have fewer and fewer of, it's going to be e-tail, not retail, so all the people that had those jobs gone. What you'll have is jobs where people will, and this is until they robotize this, because this will be robotized, where they figure out, they gather the orders, what people are ordering, and ship them, right?
Sure.
So, but that, you can bet that'll get robotized.
Well, I think that a large part of that already is.
Robotized?
They have robots that pick the stock off the shelves.
What are people increasingly going to do? I mean, yes, I know there'll always be jobs for, brilliant scientist types and tech jobs. We know that. But what the hell are ordinary human beings who used to have the opportunity through manufacturing jobs, through retail, to have a life. I don't understand it.
Well, I really, and that's why I said it's up to us.
Yeah, but but PJ, if it's up to us, then it's trouble, because you know that, because we are programmed to look for a bargain. We have been so programmed. We Americans always buy cheap. And increasingly, because more and more and more of them aren't getting paid much, they're looking for the price becomes the biggest factor, not quality, price.
Well, and that's the thing. And when the quality goes out the window, it becomes a throwaway product.
All the better.
And when you have a throwaway product, you don't need someone to repair that product.
Correct.
So you lose your TV repairman, you lose your stereo repairman, and it's just a vicious cycle that just continues to go on. I see a lot of people, myself, and a lot of people of my particular spot in society that love to bitch about Walmart. They love to bitch about Walmart, but you know what? Walmart is only there because we let it be there.
That's
and
right.
Walmart is only there because people wanted those bargains that you're talking about. And they cut off their nose in the long run, but it's just, it's
I get on my high horse and say, hey, I'm one of the people who bitches about Walmart, but I won't go to Walmart.
Well, I haven't been to a Walmart in
I won't go.
9 years.
But you know what? Here's the other thing. I can afford not to go.
Yeah, well, that's a big. Well, but see, here's the other thing too, Lynn, is that I'll tell you. Let me tell you this much. I lost my job in December.
Oh no.
Yeah.
With the museum? Weren't you working at the museum?
And that's a whole nother story, but I won't get into that. But, there are so many things that people want that they don't necessarily need.
Oh, yeah.
And we're a consumer culture. I'm saying all these things like it's. I know that it's no great enlightenment.
Right.
But it's all these things we know that we just don't recognize. And if you need all of that cheap stuff, how much stuff is bought at a Walmart and people buy it because it's cheap, and a year later it's in the trash stream?
I know.
And how much of that income that they're spending on that, if they didn't spend on that, they could save, or they could buy a better quality product. And they could buy a better quality product that could be maintained and repaired. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's.
Well, yeah, listen, the fight it's over.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
What you're arguing for, that's the side that lost.
Yeah, well, and I'm at a point. I call myself a conscientious objector to society. That's the point I'm at. I participate in it as little as I have to, but I don't. I am no longer taking sides on any of these issues, because that goes as far as politics. That I have just removed myself, and I observe. And if I get the opportunity, I'll make a piece of artwork that talks about it. But otherwise, I do what I think is right. But I am no longer passing judgment. I am no longer because of those issues. Because we see those things right in front of our face, and we do nothing about them.
Right.
And I'm not blaming people. That's the way things work. It is what it is.
I hear you. Do you have are you still out of work?
Yeah, I'm still out of work. I am on the dole, and I've been fortunate though, because I've been able to make up. You don't get the full amount that you would have normally got if you were, that I would have normally got when I was being paid for work. But I've been able to make up the difference, and I am fortunate because it's not as hard as it could be.
Yeah.
if I didn't have some of the skills to do things, because I've been able to get independent contracting work and things like that to keep my head above water. So yeah, it's just I don't want to move. If I wanted to move, I could find a really, I wouldn't miss a beat as far as work goes, as far as full-time work goes. But I think I'm going to try to make lemonade out of the lemons and try to become what so many other people are trying to become, and that's a private contractor.
Yeah, right. Hey, well, good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your work, too. Thank you so much, and your point of view. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep, there we go. Just another unemployed American. And the people that the Republicans call job creators, they're job destroyers more than they're job creators. And the jobs they create, as I said, tend to be exploitative. I'm sorry. This was a miserable, except for Tony Buba. Tony Buba is always up. Everybody to New York. To New York. What? June 8th through 12th. I might try to do that too. Retrospective of Tony Buba's remarkable work at the Anthology Film Archives in Manhattan. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll start all over and do it again next week.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.